Hello and welcome. Today we have the Aurora E5 Angel Eyes flashlight. This is a fluorescent polycarbonate flashlight. The size is going to be 66.1 millimeters or 2.6 inches by 27.5 millimeters or 1.08 inches by 13.5 millimeters or 0.53 inches. The weight's going to be 41 grams without the AAA battery inside. With a nickel metal hydride AAA battery, it's going to be about 44 grams. It features several different LEDs. We have the option of a luminous SST20 in 4000K warm white with a 95 CRI rating. Auxiliary LEDs is going to be the warm white UV combination, the E5U. This runs on two types of batteries. It features a 330 milliamp hour LiPo battery and also has a USB-C rechargeable port for that battery. And it also has a second battery tube for a AAA battery, either an alkaline, nickel metal hydride, and or a 1044 lithium ion battery. The USB-C charging port only charges the internal battery inside the Angel Eyes. The water resistant rating is going to be IPX6, and it features a couple accessories in the box. You get a pocket clip, a bag with two key rings, and an extra grommet for the USB-C port. For the runtimes, we'll go over the two front LEDs for runtime, since that'll be the main LEDs that we use with the light. It has several different modes. It has a high, medium, low, and moonlight. The high is going to be an output around 500 lumens that they claim, and they claim it's about an hour long. The medium mode is going to be about 70 lumens, and that's going to be running about 2 hours. The low is going to be about 10 lumens, and it's going to be running for about 14 hours. And finally, the moonlight mode is going to be about 0.5 lumens at 62 hours for the LiPo battery. The AAA times vary because the formats of AAAs could be nickel metal hydride, alkaline, and or the 1044 lithium ion battery format. The light does have a smart chip inside of it, which can switch it from different battery cells based on the voltage. So for example, the LiPo battery, if it drops below 3.0 volts, it will switch to the AAA chamber if there's a AAA battery in there. And if the AAA is in there and it using that as a primary cell, if it goes below 0.8 volts, it'll switch over to the LiPo battery, which is kind of interesting with this light, and it's pretty smart to have that inside the light as a function. Here you can see the Angel Eyes E5, the top side here with the two metal buttons on top, the aux LEDs here, the two CR white ones and the UV one here. And on the side here, we have the USB-C charging port along with the pocket clip side. And we have the metal pocket clip here, which is a nice strong retention. Fits in and out of pockets pretty decently, so it's a smooth experience. And then we have the latch here for opening up the AAA cell inside of here. And we also have, again, on the top here, this polycarbonate see-through form factor. Basically, it's a glow-in-the-dark type of material, which is very nice because it functions as a sort of a third type of lighting element on this light other than the main and the aux LEDs. And finally, on the front, we have the SST20 emitters in the warm white configuration, about 4000K temperature rating, and also a 95 CRI rating, which is very good for color rendering. And then finally on the back, we have the holes with the lanyard holder or the keychain holder for either side, both crisscrossed. So that is a nice function. They put it in the back there. Let's go ahead and open the latch here and take a look inside. It's interesting to note that once you take out the AAA battery, you can still run the light. And there's the inside there with the spring. The negative side goes down first, and the positive goes on top. We'll look at the head unit here just briefly. We can see the contact point there and the two screws there. And on this section here is a rubber gasket, so that keeps this kind of sealed from the water for the IPX6 rating. Let's go ahead and put the battery back in, push it down a little bit as we slide this over, and then push the latch back down. This takes a little bit of a pressure pull on the tab here, which is nice because it maintains pressure. It doesn't feel like that part's going to wear off too soon. So it's a nice locking section for the light there, and we're ready to go. As far as using the light, there's a couple different ways we can do this. This should be unlocked, but in case it's locked, in this case it is locked, it'll show you a blinking bit no matter which button you push. To unlock it, you're going to push 4 times on the main button on the front here. 1, 2, 3, 4. and that should do it there. And there it goes. It is now unlocked, showing the green LED. So on the left here, as you noticed, it has the LiPo blue LED, and then on the right, it has a green LED for the AAA indicator. That means this thing can switch between different battery sources manually as well. And to do that, we push the button once when it's unlocked. That'll get us into what we call moonlight mode, and we can turn it off by pushing and holding again, and it is now off. We push again, it's in moonlight mode, and you notice the green light is on, indicating that we're using the AAA source on this side. And there's our output for the AAA side. Now, if we want to switch it, we need to be in moonlight mode on. And here we'll push triple click 1, 2, 3. And it now indicates that it is running off the lithium polymer or the LiPo battery inside. So now we know we're using the other internal source as a power source. And that is how you switch between the power sources manually. Let's turn this off. So we know how to access moonlight mode by pushing once and then holding to turn off. Double clicking will get you to the main mode settings of low, medium, and high. And it does have memory mode, so we'll remember which mode you were on last. And we are on low mode here, medium mode, and finally high mode. And then it rotates back down to low. I like to keep it on medium mode, as that's my most used modes out of lights. Push and hold to turn off. One extra mode they have in here for the main LEDs is a strobing mode. You'll push 3 times to activate that quickly. 1, 2, 3. And we're in strobe mode on the high setting. Push once to turn off and exit out. To access the CRI modes down here, regardless of which power setting you're using, it's always the same as well for the secondary button. You simply push this once, and that'll get you low mode for the first white LED, and push again, it'll rotate to high mode. Push it again, and rotate back down to low mode. To access the UV lights, you double click. 1, 2, and now we are in UV mode. And if you noticed on the camera, I don't know if you can see it, but this is glowing here. That is the glow-in-the-dark housing, and works fairly well as a small night light. Now we can switch that over to the AAA, and you can see the brightness levels as well. So turn on moonlight mode, click 3 times, 1, 2, 3, indicates we're on AAA mode. We can turn off our moonlight mode here, double click, and now we're in the low setting of the AAA, medium, or rather this is the low section here, and we're on the medium and the high, and then rotate back out. And let's check the CRI aux lights on AAA. They're going to be a little bit less output settings for the AAA battery here in the 1.5 volt section. So single click here, we're using the 1 CRI LED. Another single click, we have 2 on the high mode here. Single click, go back to the 1. Double click, we have the UV light, and it's obviously not as powerful as the lithium polymer type battery or the 3.7 volt battery. Click and hold, turns it off. And to finally lock it out, 1, 2, 3, 4, it is now locked out from being on the offset. And if we push any buttons, it will show that blue indicator light and it will not turn on. So a highly useful function of the light here, and that is the UI section. We're going to go ahead and get some beam shots of both types of battery fuel sections. I don't have a 1044 battery to test out, unfortunately, but I do have this nickel metal hydride 800 milliamp hour battery inside of here, this Energizer one, so we will be able to test that out with the Oppo Lightmaster Pro. Okay, we're back shooting an aperture of 7.1, white balance of 5000K, ISO is 2500 on a Panasonic GH2, 24 frames per second with a 14 to 42 millimeter lens. Here on the table we have the light in low mode on the lithium polymer setting, and we have our Oppo Lightmaster Pro here, and we have the measuring right here in the center. So we're going to be about roughly a foot off the table here, and I'll move this to the side so we can see the beam a little bit too. We're measuring about 15 lux or so, and about CCT about 3900, which is right around the ballpark for the rating, and a CRI that's above the rating that they gave. It's 98, 99. That's really good. Let's check the BBL meter here real quick. So we're right on the line. We're right in the yellow tint area, which is great for an SST20 emitter. Typically, sometimes they can hit the greenish tint hue. This is more on the rosier side, at least the ones that I have here, and that's fantastic. And this, I've tested this out before, and it relatively remains on that line. They were just below it, so that's good to know. Let's go ahead and hopefully this is not giving us PWM, but we can see the flicker. We'll start that right now. So it's running the flicker test. So our flicker test is up in the corner here. So it's on the lower side of the risk to no risk, but it might show up in our camera here as they're running at a strict 24p. Let's go back to the photometry and start this back up. So from the moonlight mode, we're going to go to the low modes here in a second. Double click, and this should be low mode here. And we're getting about 500 lux, about the same CCT at 3800, high CRI is 98. Click once, we'll go to medium. And now we're up to 4300 lux, about 3900 CCT and 97 CRI. And finally, the high mode, which is about 30,000 lux, 2800 lux, 2000, I can't say this right, 26,000 lux or so is what it's settling at, around that anyway. And we have 3800 CCT and a CRI rating of 96, so that's still maintaining a high CRI rating, which is great. Okay, let's turn this off here and get to the CRI modes here. And we have the low mode. We're going to hold this about maybe a couple inches above, and it's not really registering on the low mode of the CRI aux lights. Let's go to the high mode here, and now we're at the high mode. And we may not be facing the light meter directly, so I'll move that down a bit so you guys can see the beam. And we're hitting about 100, 200 lux or so, right around that point, at about the same temperature rating for 4000 CCT and a low CRI rating, which is surprising. But that's what we got for the high mode on the aux LEDs. And we'll just do the UV real quick just to see what it looks like. We're going to kind of ignore the readings because they don't really matter as much for the UV light. That's not what we're using it for. But this is what it looks like when it's inside the glow-in-the-dark housing. It does illuminate the housing itself, and we get a nice UV look on the table. I have nothing reflective to show, unfortunately, for the UV light here, but there it is. Let's turn this off, and we're going to go to the AAA section right now. And we're in the moonlight mode of the AAA section. And again, we're going to hold up about a foot off the table. We're getting roughly the same lux output, about 17. CCT is going to be 3800. CRI rating is about 98 to 99. And let's go ahead and get to the regular modes. So double click. We're now in, should be in low mode here. And we're about 300 lux or so, about 3800 CCT and 98 CRI. High mode, we're going to get 700, 900 lux or so, and 3800 CCT, 98 CRI. And then for the high mode, we're going to get about roughly 4,900 lux, about 3,800 CCT, and 98 CRI. Let's go ahead and turn this off and get the aux lights here. And the aux lights don't measure up on the meter here, but you can kind of see on the table that it is on a lower brightness level than the LiPo battery. And let's go ahead and do double. And the double, we're going to get roughly about the same height off the table, 30 lux, 3,900 CCT, and about 61 CRI. And double click, we'll get our UV mode here, which is not outputting nearly as much light because it's a nickel monohydride battery, but it is still illuminating the housing here. And that's what it looks like on the table. Okay, let's get some beam shots of the lights themselves with all this stuff on the table so you can see how the beams look. Starting with the AAA, moonlight mode looks like this on the table. We'll hold it about maybe a foot off the table or so. And that's what we're looking at for the beam. Let's turn that off and get back to low mode here on the AAA. And that's what the beam looks like. It's got a nice hot spot in the center. It's diffused. It does some spill on the sides here. If we get closer to the table, we can kind of see the two SST emitters start forming up. You can see, obviously, that it's two separate LEDs, but when we back out, it comes together fairly nicely. Here's medium mode. And then finally, here's high mode. So once again, we got a nice hot spot in the center, and we got some spill, but not a whole lot, I'd say. And there's no real artifacts in the center, which is nice. And once again, the SST20 emitters in this particular model is on the warmer side, not the greener side. So more rosier tint, which is quite fantastic for this light. Let's go ahead and turn this off and get back to the lithium polymer setting. And now we're in lithium polymer mode on the moonlight mode. So they're pretty much, for all intents and purposes, the same kind of outputs, at least on the measurements that I've done. And then that's the beam shot. And get a little bit closer to the table so you can see that. Okay, let's turn that off and get to the low mode. So here's the low mode here. And we'll go to the medium mode. And then finally, we'll go to the high mode here. Again, very tight hotspot with good diffusion. And if you notice, there might be a little bit of artifacting in the very edges. And I don't really care about that personally. It's just the fact of the TR optic inside of there. And it has a plastic lens too as well. Let's get the aux lights up here. And once again, that's a beam shot of the low aux. And here's what it looks like on high for the lithium polymer. And we'll do the UV light just so you can see what it looks like. That's what it looks like on the table. So obviously a lot brighter, much better. Okay, we're in the backyard shooting an aperture 2.8. Frames is 23.98 frames. ISO 6400 with a white balance of 5000K on a Panasonic GH2 with 12 to 35 millimeter lens. So we have the light on lithium polymer mode with the moonlight mode here in my hand in the front. Let's go ahead and open this up to low mode here. You can kind of see the low on the bottom of the screen there. Not too much to see, but it's a good amount of light to see in front of you at night when you're walking. Let's go to medium mode. And we can kind of see on the right there, the log, it's about 20 feet up. And on the left side here, the creek. And we can bump this up to high mode. And we can see much more of the backyard. In the back there is the tree line, about roughly a good 60 feet out. And we have the rock on the right. That's a good 50 feet out or so. And the clump of wood. So as you can see, the dispersion pattern of this is a soft hotspot. It's wide, but it is a good hotspot for illuminating the path down the line here. And the high mode is definitely very functional. Okay, let's go ahead and switch the light to AAA mode here. And this is the AAA mode on moonlight mode. And let's go ahead and get to the low mode here. This is the low mode. You can barely see it on the camera, but here's the hand for reference. It's a good amount of light to shine in front of you as well. Very usable. Let's go to the medium mode. And you can see a little bit more in front of us here, the yard. You can almost just about see out to the log there, about 20 feet out. Let's go to high mode here. And that's our high mode. We can see the rocks on the right there. We can see that stump much better 20 feet out. And we can see just about a good 35, 40 feet out. And the rock's about 50 feet out over there on the side. And then we have the brook on the left here. And that's the beam shots for the AAA light there. Overall, the Angel Eyes E5 is an okay light. It did fail the IPX6 rating. The water got inside the light via these buttons here on the top. It's an ingress point for the water, and it's very disappointing as I did not put a lot of pressure onto this light with the stream of water in the sink in our test, and it was only for a few seconds anyway. So it did not make that part of the test. So I think either there's a defect or that their stated rating of IPX6 rating for the weatherproof water resistancy is off. I would say this is more like maybe an IPX4 maybe, or an IPX3 type of rating. That being said, it's still an interesting light. I do like the fact that it uses two fuel types, either its internal LiPo battery or a nickel metal hydride alkaline. and or a 1044 lithium-ion battery, as they stated in the manual. And the multiple LED options in the front here with the SST20 warm white high CRI emitters is fantastic, especially in the 4000 temperature rating. And also the aux LEDs with the warm white LEDs here, as well as the UV configuration. One thing to keep in mind, if you're going to put this on a table to stand up to use the aux, be careful about putting it on the table with the front lenses here, as it does have a plastic lens here, so it will get scratched up. Even a glass lens would get scratched up here as well. So what I would suggest for the improvement on the E5 is to put a little of a bezel in front to protect the lens so it doesn't get scratched up as much on surfaces. So when you go to put it down on a flat surface, you won't scratch the front of the lens. That being said, you can still stand it up on the side here and use the aux LEDs here. So it's not a problem with me personally. You can even tail stand it if you have a stable enough platform, and it can function as a tail standing light as well. So it does have some practicality still with it. One of the best things that I like about it is actually the pocket clip. It might appear to be too small, but this fits perfectly in my pocket. It's got enough retention, and I can, in this configuration, I can have the pocket clip go face down exactly on my shirt or my jacket, and then I can use these aux lights here to augment my hands-free operations for like writing on a notebook at night or something like that, up close at least. And it provides enough light for me to see without holding this light. And the UV is particularly useful. It's also very bright on the LiPo battery setting as opposed to the AAA setting, and that is highly useful. And the glow-in-the-dark body is also very useful, as you can see here. It's got perfect self-glowing assistance basically with the UV light in there, and the high CRI lights as well, or rather the aux lights. So the button UI system is a little bit to get used to at first, but once you get used to it, it's fairly straightforward. I like the fact that it has a lockout mode, which is really good for the pocket, 1, 2, 3, 4, and it blinks, so it doesn't turn on now no matter what buttons you push. So that is a nice safety feature they have for, like, say, if you have it in a pouch or your pocket. I would recommend maybe carrying this in the pouch because, once again, it's only IPX4 rated, so it does have some vulnerabilities to moisture and water in that sense. The fact that it uses two cells, like the AA and the lithium polymer, is an excellent thing. Again, I have to reiterate that. It's nice to see that they're experimenting with different battery powering options that you can run at the same time. I did mention, or I might have mentioned, that this can switch over automatically from the LiPo or the AAA to the other type of side. I think if the AAA battery gets below 0.8 volts, 0.8 volts, it will switch over to the LiPo. And the LiPo, if it gets below 3.0 volts, it'll switch over to the AAA automatically. So they have programmed that in the chip, which is fairly interesting with this unit. I want to thank Kyle from Goodnight Gear Shop and also his YouTube channel, Urban Survivor. I've been watching him for many years. He's got a lot of nice videos up there. He's got a lot of good information, a lot of excellent presentation of his lights and testing, and he has a lot of knowledge on a lot of items that he's tested out throughout the years. I recommend you go over to his channel, subscribe to him, and watch his stuff. He's got a lot of reviews on different lights too as well, so he's very well knowledgeable on these lights here. And check out his shop as well, as he's got a lot of great deals going on right now during the holiday season, and even just for seeing a lot of different varieties of lights. I recommend you check out his stuff there and tell him I say hello. Overall, the Angel Eyes E5 is an interesting light. I would give it a 4.5 stars if it wasn't for the problem with the water ingress coming into it. This did survive the water getting into it and even function with water inside of it. But that being said, it could be a potential hazard and not reliable in emergencies. So from 4.5 stars out of 5, 5 being the best, 1 being the worst, I'd knock it back down to, like, say, maybe 2.5 stars or 2 stars because of that. But it is an interesting idea, and it is my first RovyVon product. So maybe I got a bad model or something like that. So there's other things to consider in that rating. And I don't typically like doing star ratings, but to give you an idea of how I'm feeling about this on a more direct scale. And that's all I have to say about the Angel Eyes E5. Thank you guys for watching, and enjoy your day.